Here are some takes I found about the Los Angeles Dodgers after they won the 2025 World Series.
There's so much to it that you can't just go, Dodgers buying the World Series. Get a life.
No, the Dodgers aren't ruining baseball. They just know how to spend their money. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. The Dodgers are great for baseball.
You know, when I say I can't be critical of the Dodgers, they're doing what the system allows.
Oh yeah, the Dodgers must have ruined baseball because Game 1 of this World Series had just as many viewers worldwide as Game 7 of 2016.
I didn't hear all this whining and complaining when the New York Yankees owned the Hot Stove League and bought all the best players.
The Dodgers are ruining baseball. Why fans and experts say Los Angeles is bad for the sport. The Dodgers are doing a horrible job at ruining baseball, despite what social media might tell you. The Dodgers really ruined baseball, man. No, the Dodgers are not ruining baseball. The Dodgers played the Taliban, I'd be in the crowd wearing a burqa. I'd be in the stands wearing DPRK military fatigues and a new Shanka hat with the Jewish symbol on it. They're saving MLB.
I love that one. The thing of it is, I've developed a fascination with the discourse around the Dodgers over the last few seasons, and I've become enamored by how a seemingly normal occurrence throughout the history of the sport, that being the rise of dynasties, has managed to garner such intense and polarizing emotions out of the baseball world, and how all of this seems to stem from one central question. Are the Dodgers ruining Major League Baseball? See, it's all an issue of dominance and unusualness. There are many ways for a team to become dominant: good farm system, smart drafting, trades or free agents, or even being based out of a desirable city to live in. But the argument goes that for whatever reasons, the Dodgers are too above and beyond their competition for there to be any hope that another team could win the World Series. This is the real sub-point being made in the Dodgers are ruining the MLB argument. And as I thought more about this point, a different question entirely was birthed from my head womb. That being, just how dominant are the Dodgers compared to other MLB dynasties? And when, if ever, has the league truly been ruined? Now, to answer this question, we'll first need to figure out two things. First, we'll need to figure out what qualifies as a dynasty, and second, we'll need a metric that can compare those teams against each other in a relatively league and era-adjusted way. So what are these qualifiers? I think a team needs to meet 3 criteria before I consider them a dynasty. First, the team needs to be from the live ball era, 1923 and up, so that we're comparing teams who are playing with similar rule sets since the dead ball era was just so fundamentally different. 2, they need to have won at least 3 or more World Series in order to qualify, because I think there's a tangible and real difference between back-to-back champions, or a team that gets to the finish line but repeatedly fails, and a true dynasty. And 3, they need to have won all of those World Series with more or less the same core of players. Now, I don't have a set definition for this, it's mostly just intangible tomato boy instinct of finding a shared amount of high war players among repeat champions, and so your list is likely going to differ from mine because of this. By my count though, there are 7 teams since 1923 that qualify as a dynasty. The 1936-39 Yankees, the 1942-46 Cardinals, the 1949-53 Yankees, the 1972-74 A's, the 1996-2000 Yankees, the 2010-2014 Giants, and of course, the 2020-2025 Dodgers. Here's a metric I call tomato points. A team earns either a whole or part of a tomato point by placing top 5 in MLB in one of the following stats. ERA plus, or adjusted ERA, compares a pitcher's ERA to league average while also adjusting for specific ballparks. 100 is average, above 100 is better than average. WHIP, or walks plus hits per inning pitched, shows how many base runners a pitcher allows per inning, with lower being better. FIP, or fielding independent pitching, estimates a pitcher's performance based only on what they can directly control, so strikeouts, walks, hit by pitches, and home runs. It doesn't take defensive fielding into account at all. WRC plus, or weighted runs created plus, measures a hitter's total offensive value compared to the league average, with 100 as average. Every point above or below is 1% better or worse. OPS Plus adjusts a player's OPS for the league they're in and each ballpark, with 100 as average, with OPS being a player's on-base percentage, or how often do they get on base, plus their slugging percentage, how much power do they hit for, or OBP. OBP is on-base percentage, which shows how often a batter reaches base by any means, hit, walks, or hit by pitch, and regular season standing. The team will earn a fraction of a tomato point respective to their placement in the top 5 after finishing the regular season. The reason for these stats in particular is because each is generally associated with winning games, and by measuring in a kind of grab bag way, tomato points can help tell us how dominant a team was at most parts of the game. Now, are these objectively the best stats to look at, or the most accurate equation in the world to try and find out domination over a particular era? Probably not, but A, I wanted to take a more sabermetric approach here, and B, I'm still scarred, both emotionally and sexually, from looking at the 87 Twins run differential from last video. Anyways, we also look at something I call an elimination game negative, where a team gets -1 tomato point per elimination game they play in the postseason, with the logic obviously being that more dominant teams aren't pushed to the brink and less dominant teams are. Finally, in order to earn any tomato points at all, a team must win the World Series, and each World Series is worth 3 tomato points, thus it rewards dynasties with more World Series wins. We then aggregate the tomato point score of each season and find the total number of tomato points a dynasty got over their run. The more tomato points a dynasty in its totality gets, the more dominant the dynasty. This graph then shows us how many World Series each dynasty has won, and how many tomato points their dynasty run got. Okay, now this is a lot of setup, and I bet you're probably thinking, enough of this nerd shit, what does any of this actually mean? Well, let's just look at the lowest ranked team on this list and see what story tomato points can tell us. Let's start our journey with a man I bet most of you have heard of. Barrel E. Bonds was, by some accounts, the best hitter in MLB history, and what you're watching now is the final game of his controversial, albeit incredibly impactful, career. And this kind of uncomfortable exit is reflective of the greater deterioration the Giants as a franchise were going through at the time. See, despite eating his Wheaties late into his 30s, Barry never brought San Fran any World Series wins, and by the time he was ushered out of the league in 2007, the once strong core around him had essentially entirely collapsed, with the franchise having not made the playoffs since the Marlins beat them in the 2003 NLDS. But the Giants played the long game and slowly rebuilt over the years, beginning with calling up starting pitcher and eventual team leader Matt Cain in 2005, then third baseman Pablo Sandoval, relief pitcher Sergio Romo, and young phenom pitcher Tim Lincecum all got full-time jobs in 2008. Then established reliever Jeremy Affeldt signed with the team in 2009, and suddenly things weren't looking so bad for the Giants, who went 88 and 74 in the last year of the decade, finishing only 4 games removed from the postseason. But it would be 2010 that would change the franchise forever. First, another established reliever in Javier Lopez would be traded to San Fran from Pittsburgh, and second, and most importantly, a pair of superstars would be called up from the farm system. Buster Posey, arguably a top 20 catcher of all time, and of course the eventual crown jewel of the dynasty, Madison Bumgarner, one of the strongest pitchers of the 2010s. While there would be other big contributors like Barry Zito, Aubrey Huff, Andres Torres, and Hunter Pence, just to name a few, it would be these 8 who formed the core that would lead San Fran to the Holy Land over and over and over again. However, despite the fact that they won 3 World Series in 6 years, the Giants have the fewest tomato points out of every team considered, indicating that they were the least dominant of the most dominant teams ever. So why is that? Okay, look at this graph for a second. Each bubble here is the total number of tomato points a team got across their dynasty from each of the 6 in-game stats. Each small bubble is the number they got from each individual stat. And we can notice right off the bat a few things here. First, the Giants' bubble is tiny compared to every other team on this chart, meaning that they just didn't place top 5 in these statistical categories with the same level of consistency that the other dynasties did. Second, they're missing 2 entire stats here, having never been top 5 in either on-base percentage or WRC plus across the 3 seasons they won the World Series. Finally, and most interesting to me, they are the only team to not even register a single full tomato point in the hitting stats. So how did this team even go on to win 3 World Series? What the Giants lacked in era-adjusted hitting, they made up for in era-adjusted pitching. It makes sense considering that 6 of the 8 core members I just listed were pitchers, and 1 of the 2 hitters was an elite defensive catcher. And oh man, could this team pitch. Tim Lincecum won the NL Cy Young his first 2 seasons in the league before the dynasty even started in 2008 and 2009. In the first game of the 2010 postseason, Lincecum pitched a complete game shutout with 14 strikeouts against the Braves in the NLDS. In Game 4 of the NLCS, against the best team in baseball that season in the Phillies, Kane and Javier Lopez combined for a no-hitter. The two did it again in Game 2 of the World Series. In Game 4 of the series, Mad Bum pitched 8 scoreless innings, only allowed 3 hits, and only allowed 1 man to reach second base. In the final Game 5 of that series, Lincecum pitched 8 innings of 1-run baseball while recording 10 strikeouts, and the Giants won the 2010 World Series. In 2012, Kane pitched the 22nd perfect game in MLB history, and the first in Giants history, all while recording 14 strikeouts, tied for the most ever in a perfect game with Sandy Koufax. In Game 7 of the 2012 NLCS against the defending champion Cardinals, he pitched a shutout 5 2/3 innings while the Giants won 9-0. In Game 2 of the 2012 World Series, Mad Bum and Romo combined to pitch 8 scoreless innings with 9 strikeouts. On July 13th of 2013, Tim Lincecum pitched a no-hitter, the 13th in Giants history. In the 2014 NL Wildcard, Mad Bum pitched a 4-hit complete game shutout against the Pirates. In Game 2 of the 2014 NLDS against the Nationals, the Giants combined to hold DC scoreless for 17 of an 18-inning game. In Game 1 of the NLCS against the Cardinals, Madison Bumgarner pitched another 4-hit scoreless shutout, his second in 10 days. In Game 1 of the World Series, Mad Bum and Lopez combined for 8 innings of 1-run baseball, with Matty recording 5 strikeouts. In Game 5 of the World Series, Madison Bumgarner pitched his third 4-hit complete game shutout in the 2014 postseason, this time recording 8 strikeouts. In the final game of the dynasty, Madison Bumgarner pitched in relief for 5 innings and recorded 4 strikeouts with just 2 hits, retiring 14 batters in a row and earning the Giants their 3rd World Series victory in 6 years. As I said earlier, Matty really became the crown jewel of this dynasty, and this 2014 run is truly batshit insane. Across the entire postseason, he pitched 52 1/3 innings, had 45 strikeouts, and had an ERA of 1.03. Okay, but now get this. In the World Series, across the entire dynasty, Mad Bum pitched 36 innings, had 30 strikeouts, only 5 walks. He had a whip of 0.528 and has a World Series ERA of 0.25, the lowest of all time, man. 1 run in all of those 36 innings. Can you even comprehend how hard that is? The Giants' historic run would ultimately give in to a combination of injuries and bad luck and competition rising in the National League, and haven't made a World Series since, while losing essentially the entire core in the process. They didn't really play like the Dodgers either, who have mostly been led by their hitting metrics, nor did they quite capture the same kind of prolonged dominance as the Dodgers. I don't remember people in the 2010s saying, "Oh, the Giants have ruined the league and it'll never be the same." Now, it is true that this is all only one aspect of the game, and indeed, the Giants score lower than the Dodgers in terms of tomato points, with 9.3 tomato points scored compared to the Dodgers' 14.8 tomato points scored. Perhaps a better comparison is necessary, a closer team to our current overlords, and you might be able to find them in the 1970s Oakland A's. In 1972, the A's' long stint in the gutter was finally over. After 39 seasons, 2 relocations across the country, and only 1 season in that time period with over 90 wins, the A's won the AL West in 1971, and though they were swept by the Orioles, and no one could have known it at the time, the A's would reign as champions for the next 486 consecutive regular season games. In 1969, the A's' 88 wins was their highest since the first year of the drought, and in 1970 they won 89 games. And it's important to note that the A's didn't just change their city and their colors. The A's culture as a whole had a shakeup during these few years. The team's jerseys, as just mentioned, changed colors to become gaudy and fun. They all grew mustaches, something owner Charles O. Finley encouraged by offering $300 per player to do so. And this was in an era where pretty much every player on pretty much every team was expected to be clean-shaven. Finley himself was deeply committed to ownership at the time, and took a serious interest in making the A's his, banning the word athletic in the clubhouse in order to get the term A's to be integrated into the team's spirit and de-emphasize their old connection to Philadelphia. And say what you will about all of the bizarre eccentricities, but Charles built one of the strongest teams in MLB history within this era. Okay, but who were they? Who actually changed the trajectory of the franchise? Well, the team had spent the mid-60s building a great farm system, and spent the late 60s calling up those players. The A's core was a loaded group, filled with awesome baseball names. Third baseman Sal Bando, left fielder Joe Rudy, shortstop Bert Campaneris, who I will be calling Campy throughout the rest of the video, right-handed pitcher Catfish Hunter, left-handed pitcher Ken Holtzman, left-handed pitcher Vita Blue, catcher and first baseman Gene Tennis, right-handed pitcher Rolly Fingers, Why Is My Dick Green? Second baseman Dick Green, and the team was led by Mr. October himself, Reggie Jackson. The A's were a very talented, very good, extremely volatile group. From the outside, their facial hair and colored jerseys made them look brash, and their players' confidence often mistaken for arrogance and cockiness. From the inside looking in, the team just hated each other. I don't mean just the players either, I mean everyone. Finley was seen as conniving, and had fired 9 managers across 9 seasons before landing on Dick Williams in 1972, who himself resigned after the 73 season, despite the A's at that point being back-to-back World Series champions, because of Finley attempting to force second baseman Mike Andrews to sign a false doctor's note claiming he was injured in order to punish and replace him for 2 errors he made in the 73 World Series. Let me put it this way. Despite having this dynasty of winning, in 1976, 9 A's players refused to renew their contract with the franchise, essentially the entire core of the team. Jackson himself got into a fight in Tiger Stadium with his own teammate Billy North, and in the process injured both his own shoulder and crushed a disc in catcher Ray Foss's neck. One of many times various team members fought or nearly fought over personality clashes. Jackson, meanwhile, often congratulated himself for his accomplishments, which wasn't liked all the time, and reporter Dick Krauser once wrote, "When the late Al Helfer was broadcasting the Oakland A's games, he was not too enthusiastic about Jackson's speed or hustle. Once, with Jackson on third, teammate Rick Monday hit a long home run. Jackson should score easily on that one," commented Helfer. Krauser also noted that nobody seems to be neutral on Jackson. You're either a fan or a detractor. When teammate Daryl Knowles was asked if Jackson was a hot dog, an old-timey word for show-off, he famously replied, "There isn't enough mustard in the world to cover Reggie Jackson." Now, it's worth noting that Jackson also experienced extreme racism throughout his career, and the majority of these reports come from journalists who, notably in my opinion, didn't share a skin color with Reggie. Less known incidents of Reggie's career include literally being shot at, people screaming racist sentiments at him not being served in bars and hotels while on the road. Jackson talked about some of this in an interview with Alex Rodriguez. I find the part in particular after A-Rod said that without the contributions of Reggie towards racial justice, Rodriguez himself probably wouldn't have a playing career.
Alex, when people ask me a question like that, it's like, coming back here is not easy. The racism that I played here, when I played here, I said, I would never want to do it again. I walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, "Can't eat here." I would go to a hotel and they said, "Can't stay here."
This remarkably bullshit-free interview is worth checking out in full. And as other people have pointed out after seeing this, there's a very real sadness in watching someone who had such an illustrious and successful career as Jackson openly say that he wouldn't do it again. While this isn't on-the-field stuff, I still think it's worth pointing out, as this is the backdrop to the world Jackson had found himself in during this dynasty, even in spite of his superstardom. But despite all of this, the A's were really, really good. This graph shows each stat measured in tomato point calc, just like the last one, but this one overlays each team's individual score on one another. We can see here that in as many seasons as the Dodgers, the A's had a higher whip, a better FIP, and a better OPS plus than the Dodgers, and they had an equal on-base percentage. While they were known for their offensive production, they were a balanced group with the highest total whip out of any dynasty, and that core was filled with talent. Jackson in particular tore through the league in these 3 seasons. Vita Blue won Cy Young in 1971, with Bando finishing second that year in voting, and Williams won Manager of the Year. Jackson won MVP and World Series MVP in 1973, and Catfish won the Cy Young Award in '74. I think the intersection of this dominance and volatility could be seen right away in the very first series the team played in their dynasty era. In Game 2 of the 1972 ALCS, the A's squared off against the Tigers. Oakland had won the first game 3-2 in a nail-biting 11-inning game, with the Catfish pitching for 8 of them. Game 2 was going differently. Campy had really beaten up on Detroit's pitchers with 3 hits, 2 runs scored, and 2 stolen bases by the time he showed up in the bottom of the 7th. Detroit reliever Laren LeGros, possibly wanting to trip Campy up, threw low and inside. Very low and very inside, hitting Campy's ankles. So Campy got up, stared down LeGros, and then threw his bat at LeGros' head, and then a fight broke out. This would prove to be tough for the A's because Campy was banned for the rest of the ALCS despite the A's winning Game 2, and the series went to 5 games, with the A's only winning 3 games to 2. And in the final game, Mr. October himself was injured and out for the rest of the postseason. Nonetheless, the A's moved to the World Series and met the other premier team of the 70s, the Big Red Machine. And the Reds could have easily been in this video instead of the A's. With Reggie out, Oakland was no longer favored, and Cincinnati was comprised of some of the best players of their generation, including Pete Rose, David Concepcion, as well as probably the best catcher in MLB history in Johnny Bench. They also had been to the World Series already in 1970, but the Reds fell asleep at the start of the series, dropping both of the first 2 games at home and falling down 3-1. They mounted a comeback in Game 5 in the top of the 8th and 9th innings, though, and destroyed Oakland in Game 6. Game 7 came down to the wiriest of wires, when a very rare golden pitch situation occurred when either team could win the World Series off of the very next pitch thrown. Fingers tossed it, Rose thwacked it, and Rudy caught it, clinching the A's first World Series win in 42 years. 73 was a bit more conventional, though also dramatic. The A's met the O's, the team that had postponed their dynasty a year in 71, and who had won the World Series in 70, in the ALCS. Though this was something of a transitional time for the Birds, they still had great players like Bobby Grinch, Paul Blair, and Don Baylor. Hey! Rich Coggins, Merv Rettenmund, and Al Bunbury. The series went 5 games, but Fingers stopped a rally in Game 2, Campy hit a walk-off in extra innings in Game 3, and Catfish pitched a 5-hit complete game shutout in Game 5 to win the pennant. The World Series saw the A's face off against the ghosts of the '69 Miracle Mets team, but the team had been banged up throughout the regular season and narrowly took down the Reds 3-2. The old stalwarts of the team like Jerry Grote and Cleon Jones hadn't performed to their usual level, and young guns like Wayne Garrett and Felix Millan had stepped up. Yet against the A's, they came just about as close as anyone ever has to winning it all. The A's won a narrow 2-1 victory in the opener, but lost a 12-inning slugfest 7-10, then bounced back in an 11-inning pitching duel, but Game 4 and 5 went New York's way, and the A's found themselves down 3-2 against an improbable Mets lineup. But in Game 6, Oakland never trailed, and a 4-inning offensive explosion led by Campy and Mr. October led to another title for East Bay. Jackson had a pretty amazing run in the series with a .310 batting average, 9 hits and 9 RBI, a home run and 4 runs scored, all of which would win him World Series MVP. The third run in 74 was certainly more typical of a dynasty team, with the A's not playing in any elimination games and routing the Dodgers in 5 to ultimately three-peat. Now the A's finished scoring 15.5 tomato points, under 1 full point above the Dodgers. But their close runs and near losses in the playoffs just don't inspire the same kind of awe I would expect from the strongest dynasty ever. Okay. We haven't talked about it yet, but there is a line that just goes straight across this graph. This is what I call the threshold of sadness. When a dynasty scores above 20 tomato points, I think a real argument could be made that the league is starting to lose its piety a bit and is becoming very slanted in one team's favor. So let's look at the first team on this graph to clear this threshold. Between 1996 and the year 2000, the Yankees won 4 World Series in 5 seasons. And I would bet money that you've heard of more than a few of these guys before. But in case you need a refresher, Mariano Rivera, Bernie Williams, Paul O'Neill, Tino Martinez, Jorge Posada, Andy Pettitte, David Cohn, manager Joe Torre, and superstar Derek Jeter built the nucleus of this team, and they spent most of those 5 seasons just beating the crap out of everyone else all the time. This graph here measures both the number of postseason games each dynasty played in during their run, and how many elimination games they played in total. The 36-39 Yankees, for example, didn't play in any, but also only played in 19 games because that was the nature of the postseason back in the day. The Dodgers, meanwhile, lead all teams in elimination games, playing in 7. However, they also played in the most postseason games, with 51 total. Oh wait, sorry, did I say the most? I meant the second most, because the turn-of-the-century Yankees played in 56 games, the most out of any dynasty, and were pushed to the brink exactly one time. The Yankees won it all in '96, but not incredibly convincingly, actually having a negative run differential in the World Series that year against the Braves. The next season, Cleveland went on to represent the AL, albeit in a loss to the Marlins. This is what happened from 1998 to 2000. In MLB history, up until that point, best 114 wins in 1998. David Wells pitched a perfect game for the Yankees, the 15th in MLB history. In the postseason, they beat the Rangers by 8 runs, the defending AL champion Indians in 7 runs, and the Padres in the World Series by 13 runs. They won 98 games in 99, and David Cone pitched a perfect game for the Yankees, the 16th ever in MLB history. They beat the Rangers again by 13 runs, the Red Sox in a 5-game series by 3 runs, despite losing a game in that series by 12. They swept the Braves in a rematch in the World Series, this time with a positive run differential of 12 runs. They would face their only elimination game against the AL leading A's in the ALDS, but still pulled out a win in Game 5. They beat the Mariners by 15 runs in the ALCS, and they beat the Mets in the World Series in 5 games. For those keeping track, the Yankees lost 3 games in 4 World Series appearances. In '96, the Yankees won a, at the time, record 8 postseason games on the road. Across the dynasty, they won 14 straight World Series games. They went 33-8 during their three-peat and had a 12-1 run in the 1999 postseason. This in spite of the fact that by most metrics, their '98 team is often cited as the best of all time. Bernie Williams had 36 RBI, 58 hits, and 11 homers during this stretch, and Mariano Rivera became the best postseason pitcher in MLB history with a postseason ERA throughout those 4 seasons of 0.38, and went, and I'm not making this up, 23 straight innings without anyone scoring a run against him. These accomplishments effectively shut down the league, and with only playing in 1 elimination game, it was never close at any point in time, really. With all this in mind, the Yankees are the first team to pass the threshold of sadness and score a remarkable 20.8 tomato points. This was an extremely impressive run by the Yankees and really pushed teams. But even so, nearly 60 years before this run, another team did something even more impressive, even more dominant, scored even more tomato points, with even fewer World Series wins. Back in the day. Things were simpler back in the day. And while across the pond the Nazis were trying to take over the planet, back in the States, there was baseball to be played. I find it interesting that people get upset when commenters and fans and analysts alike include the 2020 season when talking about the Dodgers' dominance. Because the thing is, while yes, the Dodgers certainly had a different and less conventional path to postseason excellence in 2020, every other team had those same inherent advantages. Sure, things like their ridiculously high winning percentage can't be taken seriously due to lack of sample size, but their World Series win definitely should be counted. The reason I bring up this controversial topic is because similar sentiments could be had about the Cardinals' run. See, the war had taken a lot of players from the league who were either drafted or intentionally enlisted in the effort. But, just like 2020, it would be too simple to say that this is why the Cardinals dominated in that era, both because some very good Cardinals also served in the war, and because not every other top-tier talent who served missed every World Series win of the Cardinals dynasty. So, with all of that context in mind, the Cardinals dynasty consisted of 3 World Series wins in 42, 44, and 46. And was extraordinarily dominating. Let me show you what I mean. The team consisted of a bunch of young, ultra-talented players that formed a crew that was essentially the best at everything. And while that's a little hyperbolic, I mean, it's pretty damn close. Outfielders Enos Slaughter and Stan Musial, shortstop Marty Marion, third baseman Whitney Krautsky, catcher Walker Cooper, and older brother and superstar Mort Cooper were each, seriously, arguably the best at nearly all of these positions during those 5 seasons. Here, look at this. This is a graph that measures every individual season of every dynasty. On the x-axis, we see the statistical leaders without the inclusion of elimination games and World Series, and on the y, we see just the raw tomato point score of each season. For example, these dots show the Giants seasons, here are the Dodgers seasons, with 2020 being the most tomato points they scored in a single season at 6.3. Both the 2000 and 1996 Yankees didn't place at all in the top 5 of any of the in-game statistics, but still scored 3 points from the combination of not playing in elimination games and winning a World Series. And by a sizable margin, the number 1 spot on both axes is the 1942 Cardinals, who scored 9.4 tomato points in one season, 0.3 points above the next closest. And yeah, looking at that season, it's pretty crazy. In 1942, the Cardinals had the best ERA plus in baseball, the best WHIP in baseball, the best FIP in baseball. They had the 3rd highest WRC plus in the league, the 3rd highest OPS plus in the league, the highest OBP in the league. This season was one of 4 individual seasons where any dynasty placed top 5 in all measured stats. They also had the most wins in baseball, the 4th most stolen bases, Mort won MVP, and led all pitchers in WAR, pitching 278 1/3 innings, 71 more than 2025 leader Logan Webb, with an ERA of 1.78, the lowest of any season, the lowest of the season, and had 22 wins, 10 shutouts, and only gave up 9 homers, pitching 22 complete games. In a league both before Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio left to fight, Mort pitched in 90 more innings than Paul Skeens did in 2025, had a lower ERA and FIP than Skeens, and had a higher WAR than Christopher Sanchez. Meanwhile, Enos Slaughter had the 4th most WAR with 6.2, and had a triple slash of 318, 412, and 494. The team had 5 All-Stars with the brothers Cooper, Slaughter, Jimmy Brown, and Terry Moore. And they crushed the defending champion Yankees 4-1, thus securing the most dominant single season any dynasty has had using tomato points. Is what I would be saying if they didn't do it again in 1944, but better. In 1944, the Cardinals, without Slaughter because he joined the military, led the league in ERA+, WRC+, OPS+, on-base percentage. They were 2nd in FIP and 4th in WHIP, making them the 2nd of 4 teams to ever be top 5 in every recorded stat. Marion won MVP, Musial led the league in WAR with 9, and in the ultimate testament to their dominance, not only did the Cardinals win the World Series and play in no elimination games, they had the most regular season wins, 15 games above 2nd place, the 2nd most in live ball history, more than the 114-win 98 Yankees, more than the 116-win 2001 Mariners. And because I know you're curious, the first is the 1927 Murder Row Yankees. 1944 would go down as one of the most dominating single-team seasons of all time. Looking at the main graph I showed you, we can still see their dominance. I mean, not only did they win 1 less World Series, but they finished almost 5 tomato points above the Yankees, who won 4. For as incredibly impressive as they were, though, the most sizable jump in tomato points on this entire graph is between this Cardinals team and the next one we're going to look at, who managed to score 7.5 more tomato points than even the Cardinals did. The 1936 New York Yankees called up minor leaguer Joe DiMaggio to make his debut in the big leagues. In his first game against the St. Louis Browns, DiMaggio, on 6 at-bats, had a .500 batting average, including a triple, a .500 on-base percentage, an .833 slugging, had 1 strikeout, and scored 3 times in a 14-5 victory. That would set the tone for Joe DiMaggio's career. In his rookie season, he had a triple slash of .323, .352, and .576, an OPS of .928, hit 125 RBI, a rookie record 29 homers, and helped lead the Yanks to 101 wins, and was only the 4th best player on the 36 Yankees. This would set the tone for the Yankees dynasty. See, the thing is, despite DiMaggio's dominance, he was far from alone. Catcher Bill Dickey, shortstop Frankie Crissetti, right fielder George Selkirk, starting pitcher Red Ruffing, and starting pitcher Lefty Gomez, as well as relief pitcher Johnny Murphy, all helped form the core of this team. Oh yeah, well, and Lou Gehrig. Let me put it like this. Of the 25 single seasons I looked at for each dynasty in this video, there were 12 times that the dynasty in question finished with the best regular season record in MLB that year. The Giants and A's never did. The turn-of-the-century Yankees only ever did it once in '98. The Dodgers have done it twice actually in 2020 and 2024, and the Cardinals also did it twice in both 42 and 44. The only team to do it 3 times was the legendary 49-53 Yankees. Guess who's next on this list? However, the 36-39 Yankees did it 4 times, 1/3 of every time it ever happened, and every fucking year of their dynasty. In that 36 season, the Yankees led the league in every hitting tomato point stat and finished 4th in ERA plus and 5th in WHIP. All of DiMaggio, Gehrig, Selkirk, Dickey, as well as Tony Lazzeri hit over 100 RBI. In that season, Lazzeri also hit 11 RBI in 1 game, a post-live ball AL record that still stands to this day, and hit 2 grand slams in 1 game, the first time that ever happened. Gehrig won MVP, DiMaggio won Rookie of the Year, and they beat the Giants in 6 games to win their first of 4 straight World Series. I love this Time magazine quote, which proclaimed Gehrig the game's #1 batsman, who takes boyish pride in banging a baseball as far and running around the bases as quickly as possible. The Yankees took an even more dominant step forward in 1937, leading the league in fewer stats, but being an even more well-rounded team that scored even more tomato points. DiMaggio's sophomore leap would lead him to have an even more spectacular season, having a .357, .440, .643 triple slash and hitting 167 RBI, as well as leading the league in 46 home runs, supplanting even Gehrig's outstanding .351, .437, .643 season, and becoming the true leader of the team. But for as amazing as he was, he still wasn't the best Yankee that season. Lefty Gomez had a remarkable season. He pitched 278 innings, had an ERA of 2.33, an ERA plus of 193, a 3.29 FIP, and a 1.171 WHIP, as well as 194 strikeouts. Keep in mind, this is in a very hitting-friendly era with basically no defensive positioning. All of this, again, would lead the Yankees to another World Series win, where they again beat the Giants, this time more handily in 5 games. By 1938, Lou was more fully succumbing to the effects of ALS, and his production had begun to noticeably decrease. He noticed it himself and said, "I was tired mid-season. I don't know why, but I just couldn't get it going again." Of course, a Lou Gehrig with ALS is a Lou Gehrig nonetheless, and his triple slash of .295, .410, and .525, as well as his 114 RBI and 107 walks made him easily the 3rd best player on the team. However, by 1939, Gehrig had more or less completely succumbed to ALS. And in spring training of that season, people noticed, with Yankees reporter James Caan saying, "I think there's something wrong with him." Physically wrong, I mean. I don't know what it is, but I'm satisfied that it goes far beyond his ball playing. I've seen ball players go overnight, as Gehrig seems to have done. But they simply were washed up as ball players. It's something deeper than that in this case, though. I've watched him very closely, and this is what I've seen. I've seen him time a ball perfectly, swing on it as hard as he can, meet it squarely, and drive a soft, looping fly over the infield. In other words, for some reason that I do not know, his old power isn't there. He's meeting the ball time after time, and it isn't going anywhere. Lou played only 8 games of that 39 season, and on April 30th, Gehrig would play his final game, and benched himself intentionally on May 2nd, ending his 2,130 game straight playing streak. Though heartbroken, fans would get one last goodbye from the Iron Horse, as he addressed them in a moving speech in which he claimed he was the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
When you look around, wouldn't you consider it privilege to associate yourself with such a fine-looking man as is standing in uniform in this ballpark today? That I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
And most heartbreakingly to me personally, Joe McCarthy, the manager of the dynasty, in tears at this point, said, "Lou, what else can I say except that it was a sad day in the life of everyone who knew you when you came into my hotel room that day in Detroit and told me you were quitting as a ball player because you felt you were a hindrance to the team. My God, man, you were never that." Gehrig would die in 1941, but the team he fought so hard for still had one season left in their incredible run. The 39 Yankees were likely the strongest iteration of this group. They once again led the league in a million stats. DiMaggio once again had a career year, hitting .381, .448, and .671 with 30 homers and 126 RBI. And the Yanks had 4 other players play over 100 games and have a 300-plus batting average. They coasted yet again to another World Series in which they won in 4 games, sweeping the Reds. The Yankees' 36-39 season may be the best of all time. They were exceptionally dominant in basically every category of the game, and they were so for 4 straight seasons, never being interrupted. The loss of Lou Gehrig and the breakout of World War II, as well as the rise of the Cardinals, would all contribute to the end of their run, but they stand tall as quite possibly the best group in MLB history. Well... At one point in MLB history, the Yankees won 5 World Series in a row. It's a journey that you may have heard of if you're interested in baseball history, but it's also a journey that, in all honesty, was kind of boring, and you may have never heard before. Phil Rizzuto, Hank Bauer, Billy Martin, Vic Rashi, Ali Reynolds, and Ed Lopat, and of course, the always well-put Yogi Berra, made up the foundation of this team. A whole lot of other players would be in and out throughout the years, including Joe DiMaggio and other superstars like Jerry Coleman and Mickey Mantle. It's a hard group to talk about, not necessarily because it was extremely complex, but because while dominant, honestly, again, it just isn't that interesting. While each team was very good, only one scoring fewer tomato points than the best 2020 Dodgers season, for example, there was no single dominance on par with something like the 40s Cardinals, nor the superstar lineup of the 30s Yankees, nor the individual postseason achievements of the late 90s Yankees, or the cathartic and meteoric rise of a franchise once in shambles like the A's. Nor did they face tight series under constant threat of elimination like the Giants. They were just really good for a very long time, acquiring almost all of the records they did reach as a byproduct of just how long the team spent at the top. In 1949, before the dynasty had really started, the Yankees were seen as a surprise. They went on a big run toward the end of the season to catch the Red Sox and win the AL in the last 2 games of the regular season. They then went on to beat the Dodgers in 5 games in the World Series. In 50, they were a little better and won the AL more handily, with Rizzuto and Berra hitting their prime, and they swept the Phillies in the World Series. 1950 91 was DiMaggio's final year and Mantle's first. Mickey was a fine rookie, but far less impressive than Joe's incredible start. They beat the Giants in 6 that year to win the World Series and three-peat. In 52, the Yankees were again exceptionally good, and Mantle took a big step forward. They won the AL again and rematched with the Dodgers in the World Series. This time, they were pushed to 7 games and actually came back from being down 3-2, but even the individual moments weren't incredibly entertaining, like an impressive infield catch from Billy Martin here and Mantle's explosive offense in Game 7, which was cool, but less dramatic than you may ultimately first think. They went on to win, of course, and four-peated. 53 would both be the end of the run and far and away their best individual season, very nearly placing first in literally every stat. Despite this, Cleveland was really good as well this year, and even with this kind of production, they only finished 7 games ahead of the Indians, which is impressive for sure, but a far cry from the 44 Cardinals being 15 games ahead of anyone in any league. They once again faced the Dodgers, and once again won, this time in 6 games, capturing their 5th title in as many seasons. I think it's a testament to the zone of sadness that the piety in the league over these 5 seasons was so messed up that even in reflection, this time period just isn't that interesting or engaging. However, in the ultimate show of dominance, it is worth noting that if you were to take that 5-year stretch of Yankees baseball and make it its own franchise, they would have won more World Series than 22 other teams in baseball history and tied with 2 others. And it's worth noting that most people view the accomplishment of 5 straight World Series victories as the least touchable record in baseball history. Okay, so what does all of this mean for the Dodgers? Does it mean that they aren't actually a very good team? No, of course not. The Dodgers are freakishly amazing. However, in terms of era-adjusted total domination over the league that inspires the kind of hopelessness I hear people claim where we now must need a salary cap, or they aren't gonna watch because the Dodgers are always gonna win. The Dodgers still have a ways to go. They earned the 6th largest amount of tomato points, but they are within 1 point of 5th place and overtaking the A's. Will they get there? We'll have to wait and see. I wouldn't be surprised though. Even one more World Series win would almost certainly do it. And if they go on to have a historically dominant World Series win, they may even be able to catch the turn-of-the-century Yankees and enter the threshold of sadness. I'm not sure how much I would count on it though. Not only are the Dodgers one of the oldest teams in the league, the oldest by starting lineup last year, but other younger teams like the Mariners, Blue Jays, and Rangers are all peaking in the next few seasons. And even within their own division, all of the D-backs, Giants, and Padres have shown to be fearsome competition. And this seems about right looking at the graph, especially when considering that the Dodgers have played in 7 elimination games throughout their run and had a massive 3-year gap between the first World Series won in 2020 and the second in 2024. I think I'll leave you with a series to remember. In 2020, despite the Dodgers leading the league in a billion ways, despite them having a historic winning percentage, the Braves took a 3-1 lead on the team in the NLCS. The Dodgers came back and won, but the very next year, the Braves won the NLCS rematch, and they went on to win the whole thing. And I think that it should inspire a lot of people feeling completely hopeless about the state of MLB right now. Ultimately, only time will tell how it all breaks out. But I do know one thing. The Dodgers haven't quite yet reached the threshold of sadness, and so I don't think they've quite ruined the game. Yet. But hey, that's just me and my thoughts. Let me know what you liked about this video. Let me know what you didn't like about this video. I'm still trying to improve my content and figure out what everybody likes, so let me know what you thought down in the comments. Anyway, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching this very long video.